Welcome to eTeacher Pakistan webinar series. The eTeacher Pakistan webinar series is an initiative under the eTeacher Plus for Pakistan program. The eTeacher program is fully funded by the Regional English Language Office at the US Embassy Islamabad that provides professional development opportunities to English language teachers and learners across the country. These opportunities are provided through global online courses, massive open online courses, webinar series, and then engaging the alumni into several alumni engagement activities. If you wish to stay updated about the eTeacher programming in Pakistan, please follow Relo Pakistan on Facebook, and you can also subscribe to their YouTube channel. Today, as a part of eTeacher Pakistan webinar series 3.2, we will be talking about meeting the educational expectations of Generation Z. To present on this topic, we have with us today Kaukab Abid. Kaukab holds an MBA English from University of Karachi and MBA Marketing from Institute of Business Management. Currently, he is associated with Barrett Hodgson University in Karachi, where he is a senior lecturer. He has over 10 research articles being published in international journals. He has presented his research in several national and 2 international conferences held in Italy and Nepal. His journey with the eTeacher program started in 2017 when he completed assessment technique course funded by Relo Pakistan, which further provided him an opportunity to present at the NELTA conference. In addition to that, he was also one of the presenters at the eTeacher Alumni Conference held in Islamabad in 2018. In addition to that, he also completed TESOL Advanced Practitioner course sponsored by Relo Pakistan. So without any delay, let's welcome Kaukab for this webinar.
Assalamu alaikum everyone. Thank you so much for this introduction, and I'm really excited to be a part of this webinar series. The topic today for my presentation is meeting the educational expectations of Generation Z. So this webinar will enable the participants to understand what makes Generation Z so different, identify the educational expectations of Generation Z, and developing an understanding of how to meet their expectations. And for that, you'll learn some practical tips, tools, and techniques that can be used to achieve the intended learning objectives in the language classes. So what separates Generation Y from X, and is Generation Z a real thing? How old is each generation? Are they really that different? It's easy to see why there's so much confusion about the generational cohorts. So let's look at the baby boomers first. Baby boomers emerged after the end of World War II, when birth rates across the world spiked. The explosion of the new infants became known as the baby boom. The baby boomer generation makes up a substantial portion of the world's population. Today, baby boomers are reaching their retirement age. Then came Generation X or Gen X. This refers to the generation that were born between the mid 1960s and the early 1980s. They fall between the baby boomers and the millennials. And members of this group are approaching the middle of their working careers and potential peak earning years. This is the term that most people recognize the most, millennials. They are born between 1980s to the mid 1990s. So many young adults nowadays would define themselves as millennials. This generation was born in between the technology revolution. And then came Generation Z. There's a slight overlap between Generation Z and millennials, as Generation Z are said to be born between the mid 1990s and to the early 2000s and mid 2000s. They are mainly the children of Generation X, but could have parents that are millennials. As they have had the internet from a young age, Generation Z tend to be knowledgeable of technology and social media. Who am I? I am a millennial, and it's important to know that because I believe that if millennials cannot understand Generation Z, then no one can. I've been teaching at the university level. I started teaching almost 5 years back, and I started teaching with the graduate students first. So those students were mostly millennials. But now all my students belong to the Generation Z cohort. And I've observed a great deal of change when it comes to the behavior, learning styles, and approach towards the education. The way Generation X, the millennials, um, had an attitude towards education is not the same for Generation Z. Now the question arises: why is Generation Z so different? As I mentioned, that Generation Z was born from 1995 to 2010. They were shaped in the era that society started looking at screens more than faces. Um, this generation is also known as the net generation, screenagers, generation connected, Google generation, digital natives, the dot-com kids. So many of the names given to this generation highlight the impact of the digital era in their on their formative years. So not only is the technology globally accessible, but we as humans are significantly outnumbered by technologies. Today, there are almost 50 billion connected devices on this planet. That is almost 7 times larger than the number of people. This generation of children and teenagers, they'll comprise of almost one third of the workforce within a decade. So smartphones, social media, virtual reality, artificial intelligence. Generation Z is the first to be born into a time when that technology existed. They are the first digital natives. They were born into a world of vast technological advances and innovations. They are unlike other generations, like the millennials like me, who either grew up without the technology or came into adulthood during the rise of social media, smartphones, and instant accessibility of information. Generation Z is finding the world of advanced technology and constant connectivity both helpful and harmful. Now, the question arises: what makes Generation Z different? So, there are five factors that define Generation Z. Let's look at each of the factor individually. The first one is social. Generation Z are social in nature. If social media sites were countries, Facebook would be the largest country with over 2.7 billion users of Facebook, followed by China, of course. However, strangely, they are unable to channelize their need for social connection in the real world. They're always on the move. They have a short attention span and they're more likely to get bored easily and quickly. This is one thing that we all language teachers have to face in our classrooms. They can easily get distracted and they are unable to concentrate on one thing for a long period of time because they are always on the move. They're impatient. Generation Z are the first truly global generation. The celebrities, movies, music, they have always been global, but through other communication patterns, fashion, social trends, um, they are also globally connected now. That's what makes them a truly global generation. Uh, Digital change is constant, and there have been periods in the history um, of intensive change, but unlike the industrial revolution or the agricultural revolution, this digital revolution has no boundaries. Half of the world now is using a smartphone, and almost 75% have access to a mobile device. And what's more is that emerging economies are adopting technologies even faster than the developed countries. And so is the case with Pakistan. It's a visual generation too. They are more likely to watch than read. They also have a visual memory. That is one of the reasons that teachers might now need to change their teaching pedagogies and include the visual contents in their lesson plans. Now the question arises: what do they expect and how to meet their expectations? Um, we all came across a number of unfortunate instances during the shift to online education due to the coronavirus situation. Disrespectful behavior of students and lack of appreciation on the part of the college or the university administration is not only frustrating for the teachers, but it led many of us to question our decision of choosing teaching as a profession.
Thank you so much, Kaukab, for such a valuable session. We as educators really need to understand the Generation Z so that we can teach them the way they want to be taught. If you have comments, questions, and or suggestions, please feel free to write us on eteacher@evolution.com.pk. If you are alumni of the eTeacher program and wish to present in this webinar series, please write us on the same email address showing your interest and the topic you would like to present on. Until then, we wish you happy teaching and happy learning.